Hey everyone, I'm on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love your help to get there. If you're enjoying the content, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the family.
The Cleveland Browns aren't just losing football games. They're losing control of their entire identity. Inside a franchise built on frustration, one moment inside the locker room may have changed everything. It wasn't a slow collapse this time. It was a full-blown implosion playing out in real time. A breaking point that left players stunned, coaches scrambling, and fans demanding answers. What happened after the Browns' humiliating loss to the Steelers wasn't just another post-game meltdown. It was the kind of confrontation that exposes every crack in a team's foundation. According to insiders, what unfolded behind those locker room doors wasn't about stats, playbooks, or schemes. It was about pride, power, and a young quarterback who finally decided he'd had enough. For months, the Browns have been balancing on a knife's edge, a roster built to win now, anchored by a coach who refuses to admit when he's wrong, and a rookie quarterback who's tired of waiting for permission to save a sinking ship. On the surface, this looks like another bad week in Cleveland, but inside the organization, something far more serious is unfolding. A quiet rebellion led by one of the most talked about young players in football. This isn't a story about a team losing games. It's a story about a team losing faith, and a rising star who's no longer willing to stay silent. From the very first snap against Pittsburgh, you could feel it. Something inside the Browns was cracking. The offense looked lost, the energy flat, and by halftime, the crowd's frustration had turned into open hostility. Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback handpicked and fiercely defended by head coach Kevin Stefanski, looked overwhelmed. Every dropback felt like a countdown to disaster. Missed reads, panic throws, interceptions that didn't just kill drives, they drained the soul out of the team. By the third quarter, the chants started echoing through the stadium. "We want Shedeur," louder each time. It wasn't just fan noise anymore. It was a message. Cameras caught it all. Gabriel pacing on the sideline with that 1,000-yard stare, Stefanski gripping his play sheet like it was the only thing holding the season together, and Shedeur Sanders standing near the bench, helmet off, silent, watching. No yelling, no theatrics. Just that cold, controlled expression of someone who already knows what's coming next. The game itself had turned into a slow-motion disaster, and everyone could feel the pressure building. Drive after drive, mistake after mistake, Stefanski refused to budge. He left Gabriel in, forcing the same failed plan over and over, as if sheer stubbornness could rewrite reality. When the clock finally hit zero, it wasn't relief. It was humiliation. The Browns hadn't just lost a game, they'd lost their composure. The locker room, usually buzzing with post-game noise, went dead silent. Players filed in, heads down, emotions boiling beneath the surface. And then came the moment no one could have predicted. Shedeur didn't wait for cameras or reporters. He didn't need an audience. He walked straight through the crowd of teammates and coaches, eyes locked on Stefanski, and for the first time, the tension that had been simmering for weeks finally erupted. What happened next wasn't a disagreement. It was a message. Loud, direct, and impossible to ignore. Shedeur told his coach exactly what every frustrated player in that room had been thinking. "You embarrass this team. You're too scared to let us win." The air left the room. No one moved. No one spoke. The kind of silence that only happens when a line has been crossed, and everyone knows there's no going back. In that instant, the Browns stopped being a team struggling through a bad loss and became a team divided between a stubborn leader and a player who finally decided he'd had enough. That was the breaking point. The exact moment Cleveland's season stopped being about football and became about survival. The air inside that locker room was thick enough to choke on. Helmets clattered against the floor. The faint hum of the ventilation system buzzed overhead, and somewhere in the back, a single water bottle rolled across the tile. That eerie kind of silence that only happens right before something explodes. Everyone felt it. Something was about to happen. And then, Shedeur moved. He didn't shout, he didn't posture, he just walked straight through the center of the room, past stunned teammates and assistants frozen mid-motion. Every eye followed him. Stefanski stood near his locker room station, still gripping his play sheet, trying to process the loss, when Shedeur stopped right in front of him. The tension between them could have powered the stadium lights. "You embarrassed this team," Shedeur said, voice low but cutting through the silence like a knife. "You're too scared to let us win." No one breathed. Even the veterans, guys who'd seen a decade of locker rooms, fights, meltdowns, chaos, just stared. Stefanski looked stunned, like he didn't quite believe what he'd heard. He tried to respond, fumbling for words about sticking to the plan, trusting the process, all the clichés that sound like leadership when you're winning and like excuses when you're not. But Shedeur wasn't done. "Your plan," he interrupted, "is the problem. Everyone sees it but you." It was like dropping a live grenade in the middle of the room. The weight of that sentence hit harder than any tackle that night. The veterans looked down, some nodding ever so slightly. Assistants frozen, afraid to even glance at their boss. The message was clear. This wasn't just a rookie venting after a bad game. This was a full-blown challenge to authority. Stefanski's face tightened, not anger, more like disbelief turning into panic. You could almost see the realization hitting him. He'd lost control. The whispers that had started weeks ago were now spoken aloud in front of everyone by the player he'd kept on the bench. For years, he'd prided himself on discipline, structure, and quiet command. But that night, in front of 50 men who had stopped believing, all of that authority evaporated.
A few players tried to diffuse the tension. A hand on Shedeur's shoulder, a quiet, "let's cool off," but it was too late. The line had already been drawn. And what made it worse? Stefanski didn't yell back. He didn't assert himself. He just stood there, frozen, eyes darting across the room like he was searching for support that wasn't there. When Shedeur finally turned and walked away, the silence stayed. Not the calm kind, the dangerous kind. The kind that tells you the room has already chosen sides, even if no one said it out loud yet. Within minutes, phones buzzed, whispers spread, and what started as a confrontation became legend. Assistants would later describe it as the moment the walls cracked. Players would say, "That was when we knew things weren't fixable." And as the doors opened to the outside world, that same electricity followed them out, through the tunnels, past reporters, and into every social feed before midnight. This wasn't a simple post-game argument. It was the spark that ignited a firestorm, one that Cleveland's leadership never saw coming. It started with whispers, low, cautious ones traded between players as they left the stadium. A few staff members murmured to each other near the tunnel, trying to make sense of what they'd just witnessed. By the time the team buses pulled away, those whispers had turned into messages, screenshots, and quiet texts to friends in the media. And by midnight, Cleveland was burning. News doesn't move slowly anymore. One tweet, one post, one anonymous source inside the locker room, that's all it takes to turn a rumor into an inferno. Within hours, social media feeds were flooded with posts from every angle imaginable. Hashtags like Free Shedeur, Start the Kid, and Fire Stefanski started trending before sunrise. The moment that was supposed to stay behind closed doors was now the centerpiece of every sports show in America. "Something's brewing in Cleveland," one late-night NFL insider teased on X, and it's bigger than just quarterback controversy. By morning, the story had evolved into a full-blown movement. Fans were furious, not just because of another loss, but because they felt betrayed. They'd watched a promising season unravel under a coach who refused to listen, and now it looked like the players had reached their breaking point too. The comment sections were brutal. Clips from the game replayed in slow motion, paired with captions like, "This is what happens when ego beats talent." Memes of Stefanski holding Gabriel's playbook like a security blanket exploded across TikTok. It wasn't just football fans talking, it was everyone. Former players started chiming in. One retired Browns lineman tweeted bluntly, "You can't lose a locker room twice. Stefanski's on borrowed time." A former defensive captain added a cryptic post that hit even harder. Sometimes the problem isn't talent, it's leadership refusing to see what's obvious. And inside the organization, those words cut deep, because everyone knew exactly who they were aimed at.
By midday, reporters stationed outside the Browns facility could sense the chaos. Some players tried to sneak past cameras, others avoided eye contact altogether. But even the silence spoke volumes. Sources inside claimed that by the following team meeting, several veterans privately told assistants they'd lost faith in the plan. One source said it even reached ownership, that Jimmy Haslam himself started asking questions no one wanted to answer. Why hasn't Shedeur started yet? And how long before we lose the locker room completely? The truth was, that question came too late. The team wasn't just losing, it was fractured. The trust between the locker room and the coaching staff had evaporated overnight. The story that started as a small post-game clash had become an organizational crisis, the kind that doesn't just test leadership, but exposes it. And as social media continued to erupt, Shedeur stayed silent. No posts, no interviews, no cryptic tweets. Just silence, the kind that doesn't calm people down, but makes them even more curious. Fans started calling it the calm before the storm. They were right, because the locker room confrontation was only the beginning. The real fallout, the one that would reshape Cleveland's season, was just starting to unfold. Inside the Browns facility, the tension didn't fade, it hardened. Every meeting felt colder, every conversation shorter. The players could feel the divide growing, like a crack running down the center of the building. On one side stood Kevin Stefanski, the head coach who built his reputation on discipline and control. On the other stood Shedeur Sanders, young, confident, and unwilling to wait quietly while the franchise burned around him.
For Stefanski, this wasn't just about football anymore. It was survival. He'd tied his entire professional reputation to Dillon Gabriel, defending him publicly week after week, insisting he fit the system. That decision had become his hill to die on. And now, with the team collapsing and fans demanding change, admitting failure wasn't an option, not without shattering the image of steady leadership he'd built over years. The problem was, everyone could see the truth except him. Behind closed doors, assistants whispered what players already knew. The locker room had flipped. Offensive veterans were openly questioning play calling. Defensive leaders, the ones who'd carried the team all season, had stopped believing the offense could hold its weight. And somewhere in the middle of it all was Shedeur, maintaining that unnerving calm that made people nervous. No outbursts, no complaints, just quiet confidence. His silence wasn't apathy. It was strategy. The son of Shedeur Sanders had grown up understanding power better than most NFL rookies ever could. He knew the weight of public perception, the value of patience, and how the smallest gesture could spark conversation. Every time he stepped into the facility without saying a word, it said everything. I'm ready, and you know it. Meanwhile, media pressure turned suffocating. Sports talk shows replayed clips of Shedeur's college dominance next to footage of Gabriel's NFL struggles. Analysts weren't subtle. You can't have a Ferrari sitting in the garage while you're driving a golf cart into traffic, one said on national television. The quote went viral instantly. Thousands of retweets, countless comments. Even former players chimed in agreeing that Cleveland was wasting a golden opportunity. Inside the Browns' offices, that kind of talk matters. Owners notice when fans turn angry. They notice when ticket sales dip, when the local headlines shift from "Can the Browns compete?" to "Has Stefanski lost the team?" One insider claimed that upper management had already begun internal discussions, not about the next game plan, but about damage control. That phrase alone said everything about where things stood. Stefanski, cornered by his own choices, tried to project normalcy. Team meetings ran as scheduled. Film sessions stayed routine, but players saw through it. They saw the tension in his voice, the defensiveness in his explanations, the way he avoided making eye contact with Shedeur. It was the kind of power shift that doesn't happen overnight. It builds quietly until suddenly the coach isn't the one commanding the room anymore. For Shedeur, this was the moment that defined everything. He wasn't just the backup quarterback, he'd become the face of the resistance. And while he never said a word publicly, his silence roared louder than any press conference. Every time a reporter asked if he was frustrated, and he smiled and said, "I'm just focused on being ready," fans heard what he wasn't saying. The Browns were no longer fighting other teams. They were fighting themselves. A battle of pride, power, and perception had taken over. And the worst part? Everyone knew only one of them would survive it. The locker room didn't explode overnight. It just slowly stopped breathing. What used to feel like a team started to feel like two. One group followed orders, going through the motions, keeping their heads down and pretending things were fine. The other group stopped pretending entirely. You could see it in their eyes during practice, in the way they moved, the way they stopped celebrating after big plays. The spark was gone. Players talk, always have, and when the talking turns into whispering, that's when you know something's wrong. Offensive linemen started questioning who they were really protecting. Wide receivers began privately venting about wasted routes and missed opportunities. Even defensive players, the backbone of Cleveland's entire identity, were losing patience. They were tired of playing perfect football just to watch the offense crumble again and again. One veteran reportedly said, "We're doing everything right and still losing because we won't make the obvious change." Everyone knew what he meant. No one needed to say the name. Meanwhile, Shedeur kept practicing like nothing had changed, except everything had. His passes were sharp, his command confident, his energy magnetic. Players noticed. Coaches noticed. Everyone noticed. Some said he had it, that quiet, commanding presence that can't be taught. Others just said he made football fun again. But for the first time, it wasn't just about potential. It was about trust. And trust in an NFL locker room is everything. That trust, however, no longer flowed upward. It wasn't in the coaches, it wasn't in the plan, it wasn't even in the direction of the season. It was horizontal, player to player, and that's what scared Stefanski most. He could sense it slipping away. Every pep talk felt emptier than the last. Every "we'll fix it" landed with less conviction. When your words stop carrying weight, your authority dies quietly. During one team meeting, Stefanski reportedly tried to address the noise. He called it outside distraction, blaming the media for trying to divide the team. But no one looked up from their phones. No one nodded. Some players later admitted that was the moment they realized their coach was fighting a battle he'd already lost. The problem wasn't the outside noise, it was the silence inside. Receivers whispered that Shedeur's passes in practice had more touch, more precision. Tight ends said his reads were faster. Even the defense, usually indifferent to offensive politics, started asking, "When's the kid getting his shot?" The feeling grew contagious. And once belief spreads in a locker room, it's impossible to contain.
That belief came with consequences. Assistants started avoiding the quarterback room. Staff members stopped defending Stefanski's decisions in casual conversation. People who once parroted the coach's talking points now just shrugged. The energy was shifting. Leadership wasn't coming from the top anymore. It was coming from the player they refused to play. And yet, Shedeur stayed disciplined. No tweets, no cryptic posts, just work. Every throw in practice looked like a statement. Every huddle felt like an audition for the future. He didn't need to say, "I'm ready." The locker room already believed it for him. By the end of that week, something unspoken became undeniable. The Cleveland Browns had split in two, one half clinging to the past, the other already preparing for what comes next. What Stefanski didn't realize was that once belief shifts in football, it never returns. You can lose a game and recover. You can lose a season and rebuild. But once you lose the locker room, it's over. And in Cleveland, that loss was already complete. To understand what's happening in Cleveland, you first have to understand who Shedeur Sanders is and what he represents. He's not just a rookie quarterback waiting his turn. He's the son of a legend who grew up watching what real power looks like in professional sports. While other kids learned how to throw a football, Shedeur learned how to control a room. He learned how attention works, how narratives form, and how silence, when timed right, can be louder than a headline. From day one, Shedeur carried the calm confidence that comes from legacy. Deion Sanders didn't just raise an athlete, he raised a brand, a mindset, a movement. Shedeur grew up watching his father rewrite the rules of sports culture, and now he's doing the same in Cleveland.
But unlike his father's flair and flash, Shedeur's version of power is quieter, colder, and far more calculated. He doesn't need to say much because people fill in the blanks for him. Every time he steps into the facility with that same unshaken expression, every time he keeps his phone dark while the internet explodes around him, it tells the world exactly what they need to know. He's not just ready, he's waiting. And when you have a fan base that desperate for change, that silence becomes a weapon. Inside the organization, people have started to recognize it. One assistant reportedly said, "He carries himself like he already owns the room, and maybe he does." Players feed off it, reporters read into it, even ownership notices. That's the Sanders effect. He doesn't chase attention, he draws it naturally. It's gravitational. The parallels to his father aren't lost on anyone. Dion was a master of timing, knowing exactly when to speak, when to perform, when to make people lean forward in their seats. Shedeur's learning to do the same, but his stage isn't college football anymore. It's the NFL, where power is earned through patience, and timing is everything. His friends have hinted online that Shedeur's patience is running out. Small comments, nothing direct. Things like, "He's done waiting on people to figure it out," or "Sometimes you have to take what's already yours." To fans, those sound like throwaway posts, but to those watching closely, they're warnings. Shedeur's silence isn't about restraint, it's strategy. He knows exactly how long to wait before acting, and when he does, it won't be subtle. Behind the scenes, even executives have started whispering that Shedeur's influence might be larger than the coaching staff's. One insider claimed, "The building moves when he moves." Think about that. A rookie, controlling the emotional rhythm of an entire NFL franchise without saying a word. That's not normal. That's power. And that's what makes this situation so volatile. Stefanski's fighting to maintain control, but Shedeur isn't fighting at all. He's simply existing in a way that challenges it. He doesn't need confrontation. The contrast alone exposes the cracks. Stefanski's stubbornness looks smaller beside Shedeur's composure. His defensiveness looks weaker beside Shedeur's silence. It's the oldest rule in leadership. When confidence meets insecurity, the outcome is inevitable. Media outlets have started calling this the Sanders storm, a phrase that perfectly captures the energy building around Cleveland. Every show, every headline, every fan discussion circles back to one question: when will Shedeur Sanders take over? The timing of that answer could decide not just Cleveland's season, but the future of everyone involved. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about a rookie fighting for a starting job. This is about a young man raised to recognize leverage and how to use it. The Sanders effect isn't coming, it's already here. By the end of that week, Cleveland wasn't just a struggling football team, it was a headline. The confrontation, the tension, the silence, the speculation, it had all spiraled into something far bigger than anyone inside the Browns facility could control. What started as one locker room outburst had turned into the most talked about story in football. Every sports network, every podcast, every analyst had an opinion, and every word added more gasoline to an already blazing fire.
Across the league, coaches were whispering. General managers were paying attention. What was unfolding in Cleveland wasn't just drama, it was a warning. Because if a 22-year-old rookie could challenge a head coach and turn the entire franchise's energy in his favor, then maybe the old rules of power inside the NFL were starting to change. Privately, some executives called it the Shedeur effect, not just for his talent, but for what he represented. A new generation of athletes who understood influence as deeply as they understood football. Gone were the days when rookies were expected to stay quiet, wait their turn, and earn it by playing politics. Shedeur wasn't breaking the system, he was redefining it, and the league was watching nervously. Inside coaching circles, Stefanski's name became a cautionary tale. What would you have done differently? Became the question tossed around film rooms and coaching symposiums. Some said he should have benched Gabriel earlier. Others said he should have handled the locker room confrontation head-on. But most agreed on one thing. He lost control long before the cameras caught it. The only thing worse than losing games, they said, is losing belief. Once that happens,
no playbook can save you. On sports talk radio, the tone was merciless. Analysts dissected every Stefanski press conference like political analysts parsing a scandal. "He's speaking, but he's not saying anything," one host said. "You can hear it in his voice. He knows he's done." Meanwhile, clips of Shedeur smiling through practice or laughing with teammates only fueled the narrative that the locker room had already chosen its new leader. The story wrote itself. Even rival teams started weighing in indirectly. One NFC coach, speaking anonymously, told a reporter, "If Cleveland doesn't start that kid soon, they're going to lose him and maybe the rest of that roster." Another GM said, "This isn't just a Browns problem, it's a cultural shift. Players have voices now, and the smart organizations will adapt." That's when the league realized this wasn't about the Browns anymore. It was about evolution, the inevitable clash between old-school coaching authority and a new era of empowered athletes. Shedeur Sanders wasn't the first rookie to get frustrated with a coach, but he was the first to weaponize patience, to let the system implode around him while he remained the calm center of the storm. And that composure terrified people. Because what happens when players realize they can shift power simply by standing still? Cleveland had become the NFL's reality show. Every practice dissected, every soundbite analyzed, every sideline glance turned into a meme. Reporters swarmed Berea like it was a crime scene. National networks camped out for a single quote. The team facility wasn't just a workplace anymore. It was a stage, and every person in it was performing under lights they never asked for. Inside league offices, there was quiet concern. No one would say it publicly, but executives hated seeing a rookie quarterback wield that kind of control. It set a precedent, and they knew players everywhere were watching closely. In a sport built on hierarchy, Cleveland had become the first real test of what happens when that hierarchy fractures. And here's the truth. Everyone could feel it coming. If Stefanski held the line, the team might collapse completely. If ownership stepped in, they'd expose the coach's weakness. And if Shedeur finally spoke, the whole NFL would stop and listen. The story was no longer about who would start on Sunday. It was about who really runs a football team in 2025, the coach with the headset, or the player who owns the room without saying a word. The league wasn't just watching Cleveland. It was watching its own future unfold. No matter how you look at it, Cleveland has reached a crossroads. The storm that started as whispers in the locker room has now grown into something that can't be managed, silenced, or ignored. The Browns aren't just fighting to save their season anymore. They're fighting to save their identity. Every decision, every meeting, every statement from this point forward will decide whether this franchise rises from chaos or collapses under it. Inside the building, the pressure is suffocating. Coaches are walking on eggshells. Executives are in damage control mode. Players are tired of the politics, and ownership has run out of patience. Everyone knows something has to change. They just don't agree on what. And that's what makes this next move so dangerous. There are only 3 real paths forward, and none of them come without scars.
Scenario 1. Stefanski doubles down. He keeps Gabriel as the starter, clinging to his system, his authority, and his pride. Maybe he convinces himself that discipline can outlast doubt. Maybe he thinks one ugly win can quiet the noise. But deep down, everyone knows this isn't about one game anymore. If he stays the course, he's betting against his own locker room, against ownership, and against the fans. It's the kind of gamble that rarely ends with job security. Scenario 2. He finally gives in. He benches Gabriel, names Shedeur the starter, and admits what everyone's known for weeks, that he made the wrong call. It's a public act of humility, but one that comes too late. The players might respect it, but the damage is already done. No coach walks away from a full-scale mutiny intact. Even if the team rallies, the whispers of weakness will follow him everywhere he goes. Scenario 3. Ownership steps in. The Haslams have already been asking questions.
And when owners start making football decisions, it's never subtle. If they force Stefanski to start Shedeur, it ends any illusion of control he still has. It might save the season, but it destroys his authority permanently. In that case, it's not a matter of if he's gone, it's when. And here's the truth that no one in Cleveland wants to say out loud. Every outcome leads to the same place. Someone's reputation won't survive this. If Shedeur wins the starting job and the Browns suddenly take off, everyone will know who was holding them back. If he struggles, critics will say he broke the team before earning it. If Stefanski somehow saves his job, it'll only be because he survived a rebellion, not because he fixed it. The stakes have outgrown football. This is about pride, legacy, and leadership. About what happens when a young player raised in power meets a coach too afraid to surrender it. About how one decision can expose years of dysfunction buried beneath the surface. The Browns were supposed to be built for a championship run, a stacked defense, elite weapons, and a fan base desperate for redemption. Instead, they've become the league's most public case study in how quickly potential can rot when pride gets in the way. And as all of Cleveland waits to see who blinks first, Shedeur Sanders remains the calm in the chaos, silent, composed, and watching. Those who know him say he's done being patient, that the next move isn't up to him anymore. It's up to everyone else to decide how far they're willing to fall before admitting what's obvious. Because make no mistake, this isn't about a quarterback change. It's about a power shift, a cultural reset, a franchise finally being forced to choose between control and progress. One way or another, Cleveland's future is about to be rewritten. The only question is whether it's the start of a new era or the end of the old one. Right now, Cleveland feels eerily quiet. No shouting, no public feuds, no press conferences hinting at change. Just silence, the kind that creeps in after chaos, when everyone's holding their breath, pretending things are fine, while knowing they're not. Inside the facility, players go through the motions. Coaches script plays. Reporters stand outside waiting for anything. A headline, a quote, a sign. But the truth is, everyone can feel it. This is the calm before something inevitable. The eye of a storm that hasn't finished tearing through yet. Shedeur Sanders hasn't spoken publicly since that night. No interviews, no posts. Just quiet, focused work. But that silence speaks volumes. It's not defeat, it's calculation. It's the sound of a player who knows exactly what he's worth and is no longer afraid to act like it. His teammates see it, the fans see it, and the organization, they're starting to realize they can't silence it forever. Meanwhile, Kevin Stefanski walks a line thinner than ever. Every practice feels like an evaluation. Every press answer feels rehearsed, cautious, desperate to sound in control. But you can't control what's already slipped away, and deep down, he knows it. The next loss, the next misstep, the next visible crack in leadership, it could all trigger the explosion everyone's waiting for. The Browns aren't a football team trying to win games. They're a pressure cooker, one decision away from rewriting their entire future. A rookie quarterback with lineage, leadership, and leverage stands ready on one side. A veteran coach clinging to pride and protocol stands on the other. And somewhere in between lies the truth. This franchise can't survive both. The silence won't last. It never does. Because in Cleveland, chaos doesn't end, it reloads. And when the next headline hits, it won't be about another disappointing loss or another locker room rumor. It'll be about change, violent, overdue, and impossible to undo. The Browns aren't rebuilding anymore. They're being reborn, whether they're ready or not. And as the cameras roll, the fans wait, and the league watches, One question hangs heavier than all the others. When the dust finally settles in Cleveland, who's still going to be standing?